Welcome to our webcast about Linux backup disaster recovery best practice. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Michael. I'm one of the SEP technicians, mostly a support engineer here in Germany. So if you guys already use SEP sesam, you might have had contact with me. If not, we may be going to have. And yeah, today what we are talking about is Linux disaster recovery. What possible solutions do we have? What problems are we facing doing a disaster recovery, backup and restore? The next thing we're going to talk about is looking at the past. How did we solve Linux disaster recovery problems with SEP sesam? Then we're going to look into our new module, which is called Relax and Recover with SEP sesam. That's the new solution. Then I'm going to give you a live demo. We're going to restore a virtual machine into a new virtual machine. And yeah, then you can ask some questions. So, Linux disaster recovery. If we are talking about a disaster recovery backup, we are basically not talking about a simple file backup. Imagine your system is going to have a disaster. You need a whole lot more information to recover the system. Not only a regular file backup is working for a restore, you also need information about the partitions, the file systems which were used, maybe about logical volumes. You probably also need information about the hardware which was the system running on. Means if you have a disaster, your hardware is broken as well, and you have to get new hardware, and you have to get the system up and running on the new hardware, which means your disaster recovery solution needs some kind of a dissimilar hardware solution. So a disaster recovery backup is much more than a single file backup from a random system you're taking. How could you achieve this? There are some solutions on the web around which you can use to clone a complete system. One, for example, is Clonezilla. Of course, these tools work, but they have certain problems. For example, Clonezilla is basically a offline cloning tool, means it takes a block level dump of your complete Linux installation. That, of course, also means you cannot do it while the system is running, of course. You need to shut down your client system you want to back up, and you have to take a whole dump of the system. Also, such tools are not aware about changing hardware, means if you clone back a system to a new physical machine with a bigger hard drive, you're already facing the first problem. Of course, a block level backup takes much longer because you don't have the possibility to do differential or incremental backups of your systems. And of course, yeah, it's kind of an unflexible solution, you know. You cannot simply shut down a random running productive system to take a whole block level dump of the hard disk just to be sure to have a disaster ready backup. And of course, the last point, all those tools do not cover a restore to dissimilar hardware. You would have to get on your hands dirty and do it by yourself, which may take or cost you a lot of time. And as we all know, if you have a disaster of a very important system in your environment, time is what matters. With SEP sesam, in the old days, there was a special backup task which was called disk info. This backup task was basically gathering information about the system. Means beneath your regular file backup of your Linux client, you did a disk info backup, and it was basically backing up all the information about the disks in your system and also about the network configuration, IP addresses, default gateway, and so on. Means you could already use this disk info backup in older sesam versions to recover a system from scratch. How was it working? Usually your system which had a disaster was booted from a live CD-ROM. The live CD-ROM included the SEP sesam client, and you were restoring firsthand this disk info backup task into the live CD-ROM. And it was setting up your local disks and stuff. So the first problem which you may see is you got a live CD-ROM from us, which was based on a certain operating system. In the old days, we had a live CD based on Debian, and later on it was based on SES 11. So the first troubles began if you want to restore a SES system with a Debian live CD-ROM, okay? Because those distributions use different kernel versions. If you use different kernel versions, you probably also have different options regarding to file systems and stuff. Also, all most recent Linux distributions are keeping track about your MAC addresses, means you were restoring the system and then your network configuration was all messed up. So it was kind of working, but you had to get your hands dirty. You had to do a lot of work afterwards to really set up the system in a sane and good way. So that was the old solution we had, means you have a live CD-ROM and a special backup task. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the new solution we have. That's the main topic of this presentation. And this is called SEP sesam with Relax and Recover. So most of you are going to think, what is Relax and Recover? Relax and Recover is a open source project. They call themselves a set up and forget Linux bare metal disaster recovery solution. And the target of those guys is to give you the best possible way to recover a system in a complete disaster scenario. We were looking and talking to those guys, and yeah, we finally found a way to integrate this in SEP sesam. Basically, REAR is only a disaster recovery solution. It does not really care about the regular backups of the systems. So with SEP sesam and Relax and Recover, those two products into one, you get a nice and good disaster recovery solution. The next thing is, how does this all work? So I've got this picture for you guys, and we see a couple of things here. First of all, we see a backup server on the right-hand side, which is attached to a tape drive or a disk storage you're going to back up your data to. The SEP sesam server can run on any operating system, on any recent operating system, means it doesn't matter in this case if you are running your sesam backup server on Linux or Windows. It doesn't also matter where you're going to back up your data to. You can back up this Relax and Recover backup to tape or to disk. That basically doesn't matter. On the left side, we've got our backup client, which is usually a Red Hat or SES or Debian-based Linux system. We support most of the recent Linux systems for disaster recovery. I'm going to show you a list of them later on. And what's happening during the backup? We've got step 1 here. And step 1 is that during the Relax and Recover backup, the sesam client will create a boot CD-ROM out of the running system. Means everything on the boot media which is generated is from the running system. Means we don't have any third-party live CDs anymore, but we are generating a live CD-ROM out of the running system. Means you can be sure that this live CD-ROM includes all the versions of the Linux system and all the tools needed to recover you had running on the system. So you don't have the problem anymore like you're going to recover a SES-based distribution with a Debian live CD, but it's really the system you had running during the time the backup was generated. Of course, the boot CD is a really strapped-down version of the operating system. Most of the times the backup sizes differ between 100 and 200 megabytes. It depends on how the configuration on the system is looking. So the first step during the backup is creating a boot media. The second step is that the backup task also creates a recovery console within the running system. Maybe if you guys are hosting stuff at certain providers, you know that those providers give you some kind of a recovery console you can boot if your system crashes. That's basically kind of the same. So if your backup client is still up and running, but some user is able to boot in a kind of a way, means the hard disk is still working, but some user just deleted some random files, you could use this recovery console later on to start it and restore your data to the running recovery console. And step 3, of course, is that this created boot media is backed up to the sesam server. So in a recovery scenario, you would either write this boot CD-ROM to a disk and you boot your physical system from it, or you're going to configure some kind of netboot stuff, which is also possible. So you could boot the created boot image of the client you're backing up from the network, of course. And then you go on with a recovery. That's the theoretical concept about it. The next thing I'm going to show you is how it really works in a live environment. So I'm going to shut down this presentation here. And we're going to look at our setup. What we've got here is 2 virtual machines. We've got one running virtual machine which is installed with a SLES based, I think, Service Pack 3 system. And it has a sesam client installed on it. Means the sesam client brings all the tools you need for doing a disaster recovery. You don't have to install any third-party sources or something like that. And then we've got a complete new virtual machine which has an empty disk drive, and we're gonna just restore this system into this empty virtual machine, just that you guys get a feeling how it works. Then of course we've got our SEP sesam graphical front end, which we have running a backup server on a SLES version 2. And usually, I don't know if you are familiar with SEP sesam at all, but if you have created your clients, you can define backup tasks. And of course, the first step is to create a backup task for your BSR. That is pretty straightforward. I'm just looking at the client we just had, which is called rear test. And we're going to browse the system to create a new backup task. So browsing the system will show you all available backup options on the client. So we can see we can back up a PostgreSQL database here. We can create a local file system backup. And we also see the special tooltip which is called Linux BSR. Means this backup task, if you choose the Linux BSR option, will create a relax and recover backup. That's it. You just create a backup task, and then you're ready to go and do a backup on a timely manner. Of course, if we're talking about the disaster recovery backup, it doesn't always make sense to have this running each day in the week. Usually you should execute this task after freshly installation of a system, or you start it probably if you change disk volumes, or you create new mount points, or you change the IP address. So if your system configuration is changing, you should always execute this BSR backup task. It depends more or less how often your systems change in their configuration. I mean, the backup is only between 100 and 150 megabytes big. So it's really not that hard to do it on a weekly basis, for example. The second backup task we need is a regular file backup of our Linux system. This gives us the great possibility to have a regular file backup during the week, for example, using a differential or incremental backup, and a full backup of the system on the weekend or once a month. Means your BSR backup is entirely splitted from the main file backup of the client. So that really gives you the possibility to have incremental and differential backups. You are not able to do this with Clonezilla kind of a way, you know. So I have executed already those two backup tasks to save some time. The next we're going to do is we look at our virtual machine. So if you have executed this Linux BSR backup task, you of course need to restore the ISO image or the boot media created. I have skipped the step for time reasons. If we look at the options of our virtual machine, we can see that the boot device is set to a ISO image. That's basically the rear boot media which was created during the backup time. Depends on how your environment looks like. There are several options during the backup. Means if you choose to keep the ISO image on the running system and you want to burn it on CD immediately, that's possible too. Well, if you're going to have to restore the data, you can restore it to another Linux system which is running and then burn it to CD-ROM or whatever. So that's up to you. I just skipped the step. I can show you in the graphical user interface. It's basically just a regular restore of this ISO image. We're going to start a new restore task. The restore will give us this backup task, which is for this system pretty small, only 69 megabytes. And then you can choose whatever client or another system to restore this ISO image to, and then you can burn it on CD. So I simply copied over that ISO image to our ESX system. And yeah, what we're now going to do is we're going to shut down the original machine. Because during the boot up of the recovery console, the virtual machine will use the same IP address as it was using during the backup. Means the network configuration is exactly the same. So we're going to start up our virtual machine. And it will present us with a boot menu. So that's basically the recovery console. You can also boot from the running system. And we're going to just choose recover rear test, which was the name of our system. And it will basically boot the Linux kernel and all the tools which were back up from the system. And the first thing we're going to note during the boot up is it's going to ask us whether we're going to replace the network configuration. Means during the boot up of the live console, the system already noticed that there is a network configuration which is different to the original system. We're going to just say yes here. We're going to use this network card. So it's reloading its configuration, and in the background is starting the sesam client. So means the system is now up and running. Of course, it's not the complete system. It's a really strapped down version. Means it's already reachable over network. Okay. So the next cool thing is we don't have to be on the system to recover it. We can also work remotely. I'm going to start a new PuTTY session now. And we're going to open a SSH session to the recovery console. And as you note, it asks me for the SSH key, means all the configuration from the root user is already in the ISO image, so we don't have to care about passwords here. So, and that's it. Now we are in the rescue image of the running system, means our virtual machine is up, is reachable by IP address. So this, of course, has a big advantage. Imagine your DNS server is having an outage and you configure your rear backup to include your DNS server service within the recovery console. Means if you boot the recovery console, your DNS server is running while you are restoring the system and you don't have any outages in your network. So next step is recovering the system. We're going to run this command, rear recover. And it's starting up the recovery wizard. The first thing we're going to note is that it tells us the disk information or configuration is identical, means it's going to start the partitions and file systems right away. So we can see here it's creating a X3 file system on the SCSI disk. It's mounting the file system, and this was pretty fast. And it now tells us we can restore our data to /mnt local. Means the live CD-ROM has now configured the file systems like they were on the original system, and we can now proceed with restoring the files. You may gonna ask what's supported here. Usually we support all the standard file systems which come in the different distributions. For example, X3, X2, X4, Riser FS, XFS, all the common file systems. Yeah, that's it. We have restored our disk layout, and the next step is to restore the data. Means we're gonna start a new restore task from our file backup of the system. Pretty straightforward. We want to have all the data. We're going to complete restore of the selected task. And now as the client is already reachable, we can browse the running live CD-ROM, and we're going to choose /mnt local as our restore target. This is basically the freshly formatted disk. I'm going to press OK. We're going to start this restore right away. So the restore going to take a couple of minutes. So I'm going to show you where you can find information about this whole topic. We've got a web page, of course, and we got to also have our wiki, which is on wiki.sepsoftware.com. And we got documentation about all the modules we have in SEP sesam. And of course, we also have a documentation for the bare metal recovery in Linux. This guide will talk you through all the things I've told you in the last couple of minutes. Means you can see how it's working, you can see how you're gonna create your backup task, what special options are existing, and there's also a complete documentation on how to do a restore of a system. So everything I'm going to show you in the next couple of minutes is also covered in this documentation. It also tells you which distributions we support, what file systems, and so on. So if you guys want to have a look and give it a try, just open our wiki page and look at the documentation. It's really helpful. Of course, the next thing is most of the people nowadays are doing backup to disk. So the next step we're gonna achieve in the future is that you will be directly able to boot this live CD-ROM image out of a SEP sesam data store. A SEP sesam data store is basically a backup to disk. And of course, you could also configure your virtual ESX servers or netboot to use this disk store, and as such be able to completely boot the backup file directly from the disk store. So you don't have to restore the ISO image first and burn it on CD-ROM. That's going to happen in the future. And of course, you're going to work on making this whole thing a lot easier, even more. While the restore is running, if we look at the local file system of the client, we can see there's already data on it. So it's basically restoring the complete file system of our Linux machine to this MMT local location. And this one just looks like a regular Linux system here. So the next step, after we have successfully restored the files, is of course the bootloader. So you don't only need information about the network and the hard disk sizes and the file systems, you also need information about the bootloader which was used. So we're finished here in this recovery console. So we're going to type exit, and it asks whether if we have restored our data, and we did so, so we tell them yes. And the really last step now is the bootloader configuration. So the rear recovery console now scans in the background which bootloader was used on the system, and it's going to install exactly this bootloader again, so we are able to boot the system like before. Means if you're using grub or grub2, the system is going to support it. And yeah, as you can see now, it was installing the bootloader, and it does of course also look for new drivers on the system. And that really goes into this dissimilar disaster recovery. I mean, a dissimilar disaster recovery of course has its, it's not working in all kind of configurations, but the most basic configurations work really good. For example, if you back up a physical system and you want to restore the physical system to a virtual machine, or for example, you have a virtual machine and you want to restore the virtual machine to a physical system. It's also fixing your UDEF configuration, means new network cards will be detected. And yeah, that's basically it. We have just recovered the system, and now we're going to reboot the recovery console. And switch back to our virtual machine. And as we can see now, after we reboot, we got the original system running in this empty virtual machine, and we can boot up. And that's it. So you can see it's really easy to configure a backup suitable for a complete disaster recovery. And it's already really simple doing the restore. You don't have to mess with scripts or something like that. It's really straightforward. It's menu driven. And yeah, I think it's a really nice solution, and you guys should try it. That's it for this webcast. If you have any questions, and also if you want to have a demo license for trying this whole solution, please drop us an email to support@sep.de. I'm happy to hear about all the tries you do, also about the operating systems you're trying to recover. We're really waiting for response here because this product is pretty new in SEP sesam. So give it a try. And yeah, thanks for listening. And of course, for questions, just contact support@sep.de. I thank you for listening and have a nice day. Bye bye.